We expect a couple more to be joining us, folks, but on behalf of Ronald and myself, just wanted to say that you're very, very welcome. Good afternoon, good evening for those in Europe and in the US. Um, my name is Richard Wood. I go by RB Wood as a writer and as a industry professional, and I am CEO of Ruadán Books. And with me is my co-conspirator, Ronald. You want to talk a little bit about Temple Dark Books?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Ronald A. Geobey is my name. I founded Temple Dark Books in mid 2020. We started publishing in early 21, and we are into our fifth year of operations with, I think, 13, 14 titles so far.
Mhm.
And everything's been going really well. It's going up all the time. It's getting better all the time, and we've been building out our infrastructure, and that's part of the context within which Richard and I have come together. So it's been fun doing conventions and just really building credibility, working on our exposure, our
Mhm.
social media activity, and just getting people to pay attention to us, which is the always the hardest part for an indie publisher, you know. So
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons we're here, right? Is as two indie publishers who have very similar tastes in dark fiction, we we saw a really interesting opportunity to work together. That doesn't mean that we're not running our own shops, because we are, and we're continuing to do that. Whereas, Ron has been in business for 5 years with Temple Dark Books. Ruadán started a little over a year ago, and we have six titles. Our seventh title is coming out in February, and our current pipeline shows us with another 15 to 20 titles up through the beginning of 2028. And towards that end, and with regard to infrastructure, you know, there are a lot of challenges running an indie publisher. And what we thought that this fireside chat, and we're thinking of doing more of these. We'll see how this goes and what the reception is. But what we want to do is talk about, the businesses, the good, the bad, the ugly. I know a lot of people say don't show them how the sausage is being made. I think it's important to understand how the sausage is being made. That way you don't poison anybody. And and a cooperative that we've formed is is just indicative of this industry that we've chosen. You know, a lot of folks, especially in the higher and the larger publishers, will see, like Hachette will see Simon and Schuster as a competitor, and Penguin will see Macmillan as a competitor. We have a lot of the same problems as the big guys, but we don't have the leverage of the big guys. And that's the first reason we've done this, because working together, we can achieve more, cut better deals on back end, whether it's distribution or printing, what have you, items, than we can as solely independent publishers. And that's really goes to where we are, the global reach that publishers need today. We don't have global sales force. We have to contract out distribution partners who have sales forces in different regions. And our distributor here for Ruadán Books is North American based. It's Canada, it's the United States, and in those regions, there that opens up 80,000 bookstores, libraries, and things like that for us now, and that we've signed that deal at the end of December of last year, which is marvelous because I just had 5,000 books delivered to them last week. So, and they're based in Chicago, in the middle of this country. However, you know, Ronald's got a growing network, obviously not just Ireland, in Europe, has his contacts in, and I'm talking for you here, Ron, so forgive me for that, but has his
No, no
contacts in
problem.
both printing and in bookstores. The big deal with HMV is fabulous. For me to send a book over to Ireland, if I don't just pack my suitcase with them and try and bring them over, um, which I could do, I guess. That would mean I have to go over to Ireland more often, and that's just a terrible, terrible burden to bear. That's
Yeah, you
obviously
wouldn't enjoy that at
sarcasm.
all. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't enjoy that at all. By the way, I'll be back over
Mm,
there in March for anybody who's there right
yeah.
now. Um, there's a lot of tariffs and shipping costs and things along those lines, whereas leveraging each other's infrastructure brings those costs down. We have now a sales force in North America for the 40 million potential readers in Canada and the 350 million readers in the United States, um, that we would like to open up for not only the 7 books soon to be in the dozens for us, same with Ron, but for both of us. And that's the leverage that we're looking to really apply here. Now, there's some back end issues with that, right? You know, because we're continuing to run our businesses as the businesses, right? And as separate entities. We have contracts in existence with writers, and the terms in Europe and the terms in the United States and the legalities in both uh, um, regions are very different. So we're going through the contracts right now to make sure that everything is copacetic, and we do this for our authors and our artists, right? It's important that as we expand and increase the potential audience, that contractually the legalities are out of the way. So quite frankly, the artists can focus on what they do best, which is write or paint or draw, right? And that's important to both of us to make sure that everybody's taken care of. Um,
Mm.
but I think it's a fun story. You know, Ron, I think how we got together was a bit of a fluke and a bit of what they would call here a Hail Mary for pass, right? Um, and I think that's a fun story if you want
Yeah,
to kind of go into that a little bit, because I think I'd
yeah,
reached out to
yeah.
you first. Is that how it happened? It's been, you think
Yeah.
this
And
it
look,
was 20 years ago, but it was a few months back.
yeah, I think for those of our authors and writers, or published or unpublished, who are here with us, um, they'll know full well of the bombardment of spam email you get. Everyone trying to sell you every sort of service under the sun and everything. So you're always sort of thinking, well, these emails come in, and you want to collaborate with us or work with us, or you want to, you never know what's coming in. But when Richard's email came in, um. I just sort of did a double check and looked up the company, and he looked, it's very professional. I said, this is okay, this is the real deal. This is somebody who's interested in working with us. And so I got back. It actually sort of coincided. I had been in London Book Fair speaking with the owner of O'Brien Press, which is Ireland's longest running publishing company, and he had said to me, he said, "Look, you want to the genres that you are publishing, Ireland is not great for them and has never been great for them. People in Ireland tend to buy what's published in the UK and US when it comes to the spec fiction." And he said, "But you need to try and reach a more international audience, and to do so, you're going to have to find uh, uh, partners or distributors in different regions." And that just sort of coincided. That was on my to-do list to try and reach out and find someone. And then Richard got in touch um, with really just sort of you know, let's see if we can collaborate in some sense. There was no really,
Mm.
we weren't really clear on how this was going to work. But I had been looking into because I have some American authors, I was looking into, well, how do we get their books on the shelves? And you've got incredibly expensive business setup processes for the US from Ireland and probably from anywhere else in the world, but and IRS implications and so on. So this is not a road I want to go down. So having another company from the US come along and say, well, we can facilitate that connection you want to make, and so we just see if we can find a way to get our books on the shelves in the US. So that's how it started, and we've sort of went back and forward for a few months really before you came over, Richard, and we sort of hashed it out. But so yeah, we found not to diminish it by calling it a loophole, but we found a way that we can do this. Um, as most of you will probably know, I mean, the publishing industry has just completely upended itself in the past 2 decades, and the infrastructure is totally different. Um, it wasn't that long ago, and I'm talking within like since I started this 5, 6 years ago, that to have something that was digitally printed, which has been really looked down upon, what had been looked down upon for a long time. This is now being done by the major players in around the world in the name of sustainability, of zero
Mhm.
inventory, and all those sort of things. And the printers that I'm using now in the UK, I check every time I go into a bookshop. I look at who is printing these, with the major labels, and a lot of them, Simon and Schuster, Penguin Random House,
Mhm.
HarperCollins, they are using the same printers that I use, and that's a little bit of that was a validation moment, I think, for me to okay, well, I'm on the right path here, because the big players are using
Right.
exactly the same guys. Um, and then I was able to tie in with the printers and the distributors. They have a very tight network in the UK and Ireland. So that was great. So that's really what I've been able to offer to Richard in terms of piggybacking and leveraging that infrastructure. And then he has the
And
same going
and
in on his end.
well, what I loved about our conversation is I knew, and you can ask any member of my staff anytime they spoke with me. Um, the other than the first thing, which was "Hi, how are you?" The next thing was I need to get a printer and I need to get a distributor, right? And Ronald shared some of his stories. Once we met, and I think it was maybe 5 minutes into the conversation, and we realized the two of us have the gift of gab, as they say in Ireland, really, really, really well. And
Too much sometimes,
we
yeah.
have a love of Scotch, and we have a love of the books that we publish, right? That we're both passionate about it. But he'd been down the road to find a printer, find a distributor, and cut those deals before I did. And the advice he gave was stellar. And what did it end up doing for Ruadán? Well, we were doing print on demand. I will tell you the industry as a whole, and I'm talking about the brick and mortar books shops out there, even the indie bookshops out there to some degree, look down on the print on demand folks. They're not as serious about the business as people who have a printer and a distributor out there. What does that mean? It means that they have a very limited shelf space and they are very fastidious about picking and choosing what books they put on that shelf. You could have the best writers in the world, and I might be biased, but I think Ron and I have the best writers in the world writing for us, and would be ignored by the industry because we're print on demand. Now, I just signed with an 88-year-old printer out of Chicago, so in the middle of the United States. They I got the first cases of our books because we're going to be going to a convention in Boston next month, and it's be the first time we actually have a table at a big speculative fiction, dark speculative fiction convention called BosCon 63 here in Boston. And the quality from the printers, right? Now, when Ron and I met, we met and really met in person at what was the restaurant we went to? The Castle, the
Cabra Castle in
Cabra
just
Castle in
outside Kingsport, County Cavan. Yeah.
Yeah, in because I was staying in with a friend of mine in County Cavan, and what a beautiful place. We both brought each other copies of our books, and the quality of the books that Ron brought me were fabulous, right? From his printers. The books I brought were the print on demand, which are okay. It was Ingram Spark, which is their print on demand version. But I've got the copies of the books from our printers, and they are head and shoulders above what we were initially printing. It makes me, if I had the money, it makes me want to pull all the other copies back and replace them with new copies I'm not doing that, but
You do, yeah.
I
You
would
sort of
love
feel,
to.
yeah, and that's what I faced when I started this, because I was using, I had looked at the whole, like, going back to 2010, 2011. I was using self-publishing platforms, so I was familiar with it and familiar with the quality of it. And there was a big learning curve in, like, well, how do I make the stuff stronger, and how do I make the quality of the output better? And when you were going into, as you were saying, when you're going into independent bookstores, they would look at them and they use this term, even though I was publishing other people, they would say this is self-published. So self-published had become this umbrella term for things that were print on demand. Now, I was in our local bookshop the other day, and one of my favorite horror writers, Brian Lumley, his Necroscope books um, were on the shelf, and one of them uh, was I can't think of who the publisher was. I think they were Collins. I think they're HarperCollins, but uh, one of them was clearly a short run printed book, so good quality, good heavier card on the cover. The other was a print on demand. So the back catalog now for some of these major players has been all totally been shifted to print on demand, and you could see the quality difference straight away. So it is a decision to be making. That's something, Richard, that we look at going forward when each author's books are put into the different region, the different market. We will determine, well, how many will be printed on a short run initially
Right.
before then they switch to print on demand. And that all comes down to demand, demand within a given initial period, whatever that might be,
Right.
because this business is very, the overheads in terms of obviously your printing, your storage is ongoing. We have books in Gardeners UK. There are distributors, and we have books with them at the moment. And the more you put in, so you have to make those decisions about, well, what ones are being put in, and the costs accrue. So you always have to make those decisions for your authors based on your predicted
Mhm.
sales. So all that is going to play into the strategy of how we move forward with all this.
Well, and there's so many little nuances too that we're still in the process of sorting through. For example, one of the things I learned from Ron a couple of weeks ago is that mass market sized paperbacks are still huge over in Europe, whereas in the
Mm.
States, the ebook has really taken over. The mass market paperbacks really aren't produced anymore. I was so excited when I was in a bookstore the other day. I was looking at Brandon Sanderson's latest release, and I've noticed that all of his books are coming out in mass market paperback, which if you know anything about Brandon Sanderson, that means they're as wide as they are um, tall. But you don't see those anymore. They're all trade paperbacks, and they're all expensive, right? So a trade paperback is $16 and more above. And I miss those. I miss those smaller books. And I know Ingram Spark and Amazon. Amazon is just getting away from their whole Mobi format, which is great because it's only been outdated for 20 years. But Amazon, and they're getting away from even offering that size potentially as printing. You have to go to a specialty printer for that, or an individual printer, which the press that I print with now actually has that size. But I will have to reformat all my books for the marketplace in Europe, so they are mass market paperback. And a lot of it has to do with the size of the bookstores in Europe, right?
Yeah,
These
but even
are
the large one,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but even the large one has a very, if I remember correctly, the trade paperback in in Europe, which actually started off almost 20 years ago, as the airport edition. I remember
right.
working in a bookstore in Dublin Airport, and these large ones had come in, and but that one is, so we've the 6 by 9 inch, which is the standard here, and
Mhm.
yours is eight and a half by five and a
Yeah,
half. Is that right?
five and a half by 5.5 by 8.5 is the ones
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could do a 5 by 9, but you know, I have a designer. I know that Ron has a good designer as well, and we can reformat those books. But it's just all part of um, learning how each region operates. And it's
Mm,
important because with the knowledge that Ron has with working not only in Ireland, right? So you've got 8 million people in Ireland, so it's a smaller sample, but of course Ireland's also the per capita wealthiest country in the world right now, which is fantastic. But he's also into the UK and he's into Germany and he's moving into Europe as a whole, which is amazing, but what do you want to do as far as translation? Now, the good news is most people in Germany and Scandinavia speak English better than we do here in the States. You notice I said the States, not Ireland, because there's much more literate people, I think, in Europe than here in a lot of cases. Not my staff and not my folks, but in general.
mm,
They but learning how those regions operate is absolutely going to be critical for both of us to make sure that we are maximizing our efforts to sell in the various regions, but minimizing the costs there, right? This is a business. The one thing that Ron and I agreed with immediately, right, is we need to run this as an actual business. Now, I have an MBA, believe it or not. I know I have this American accent, but my MBA is from UCD, the Smurfit School. Okay, because I was
You
over
lie.
work.
There's no education in America yet at all.
Well, I was living in Ireland at the time. I was working for a company that will remain nameless, a financial services company. I was living there for about 5 years. Had a nice little flat in Stillorgan, and then I had a nice little semi D down in Wicklow in a little town called Kilpetter.
Mm.
Um, but I'd rather move north of the city if and when I come back. I like County Cavan, but it's County Monaghan has some appeal as well, doesn't it there, Ronald? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my thought here is you don't gain that knowledge as a small independent publisher, really, right? Now, Ronald and I are both the editors in chief for our presses, and we know the stories we like. We work on the stories. But as a business, you can have the best stories in the world, but if you don't have the sales infrastructure in place or the distribution infrastructure in place, nobody's going to know about it. And the key for from a Ruadán Books perspective, and I know Ron feels the same way, is it's not just the infamous and famous authors that you want to publish. You want to find those diamonds in the rough out there. And I think Ruadán already has done that in our anthologies and in our novels. We'll be coming out with a novella line later this year. We've found the diamonds in the rough, and as part of our slush process for our anthologies, and that has turned into contracts for longer works.
Yeah.
Our job now is to get these folks really, really involved with their craft and being able to take their craft to that next level. I hope the next level is still with us, but if it's not, I'll cry, but I'll wish them well because then we've done our job um,
Well, I think
as a company. But
yeah, like I think as an indie press, it's easy. I'm sure almost everyone here on the call will understand and will agree that you go into a bookstore and you'll see that the major labels are jumping on trends and follow the trends, and they'll even put their submissions calls out based on what's selling, what's hot, what's not right now, you know. And as indie presses, I think generally across the board, indie presses are risk takers, and we want to give unheard voices a chance, and we want to take that shot. And it can be very disheartening when you don't hit the note in terms of trends. But I mean, never forget as a writer that your book could be on trend 5 years later, 10 years later. You could just hit that
Hmm.
sweet spot, you know. So it's not, there are some people who would just, well, I'm going to write what's, and I've heard it from some writers who would say, I'm going to write what's hot right now. You know, I'm going to write romantasy, or I'm going to write vampire stuff. You know, we've seen the vampire buzz, the zombie buzz. You know, it comes and goes. But I think to for what you write, stay true to what you write,
Hmm.
because it'll come up again. You know, it goes round and round. I wanted to just draw attention to the comment there about the print on demand issue, and it's interesting that because I spoke with Tom, who's the owner of that bookstore, Rover for Books, in which I saw the copies of Necroscope. And when those copies, because that other copy of Necroscope was brought in, that print on demand copy was bought in on special order, and the margins are so tight because, as you mentioned, the costs for print on demand per copy per unit are very, very high.
Yep.
So you've got a really tight margin. And that's why when you go for something, if you have a new release, that's the strategy that I'm probably going to adopt going forward. When you have a new release, you try and build up your pre-orders. You try and go, okay, well, we need X hundred or thousand or whatever it is number of copies. Because when you get them at a lower cost per unit. But as soon as you switch to print on demand, your cost per unit goes way up. The margins drop for the booksellers, and then the booksellers will make strategic decisions as to whether they'll stock them or not. And that affects the whole operation. Because if the bookseller will come on and say, well, there's no point me stocking that book because I'm only going to make €1 or $1 or whatever it is on that. You know, the booksellers are always complaining about their bottom line and they don't make enough. And you know, they have their overheads. That's why so many brick and mortar stores, so many indie stores are closing down or just don't survive, or people just don't take the risk. And that's how the larger supermarket style bookstores are surviving. They
Yeah,
will
the
take,
big
you'll
box
see on their
stores.
shelves.
Yep.
Yeah, and they will take the ones that they know are guaranteed to sell, and they're very, very unlikely to uh to take the risk, you know. And I noticed we'll probably move on to the questions now. We should probably get onto the questions soon. But there was a question about the brick and mortar stores. And I think
Yep. And
that's
I see
important to
Robbie's got his
realize.
hand up as well. Robbie, we'll get to your question in a minute. Leave your hand up so
Yeah.
we get back to you, bud.
Yeah, and so the brick and mortar stores, I think, you know, they're the people who are curating what they have. They're
Yep.
usually much more passionate about selling. They're actively selling, and that's why, you know, I went around and I met a lot of booksellers in Ireland, and I've spoken to some in the UK at conventions and trade shows, and those who are real booksellers are totally different to the ones that, like, you see in the US, you'll see your books in Walmart or whatever it is. Here, you know, here and in the UK, you'll see books being sold in Tesco, you know, and they are simply the ones that, well, they are the top 10, you know, they're the best sellers, or they're
Right.
the ones I can take in because, again, this comes right back to how they were printed. Because if they're mass produced, they're much lower cost per unit and a much higher margin. And so the print process has a huge effect on what ends up on the shelves. It's very, very
Absolutely.
important to keep that.
Let me give a quick example and then we'll get to the questions. You
Mm.
know, and I'll give you ballpark figures because there's pennies involved, but although we just discontinued the penny. For print on demand copies of 100 copies or 500 copies of a book, I would pay $6.97 per book.
Per unit, yeah.
Print and then put in a warehouse, I'm paying 4.50 a book or $4 a book. That's a huge difference when you're talking about the difference of profit of $1 or €1 versus $3 and €3. That's huge. It's a small margin business, and keeping an eye on the ball, which is what Ron and I love to do, along with our writing aspect, is one of the other reasons we're together. All right, Deborah, if you don't mind, Deborah is my marketing manager for Ruadán Books, and forgive her, she is significantly under the weather, but she didn't want to miss this for anything. So um, she is going to be going through the questions with us. Deborah, if you don't mind, what questions do we have? And make sure that I know you put a note out there about checking the chat as well.
Well, would you like to start with Robbie's question?
Yeah, well, I've already mentioned
why
it, and
not,
his
Jim?
hand is up there, and I'm still looking at his hand being up. So he's going to get tired after a while.
So I had initially submitted a question, but you guys have kind of covered it. What advantages do both publishing houses gain? But as I've been listening to you, I thought of another question. Do you both use a similar advertising strategy or promoting the books, or are you different, or will they be kind of a combination of both of your minds?
Oh, I love that question, Robbie.
Yeah.
I'm glad we answered your first question. You came up with that one. That's a good one.
Okay.
I'll jump in first, Ron, this one, and then you can jump in first the next one. If we take turns, then we won't be stepping on each other. We talk over each other all the time. We're like two siblings sometimes. Um, the answer to the question is our strategies are a little different for the marketplaces that we are working in. We're looking at that now and how we can leverage each other's strategies. We're doing a lot of social media marketing. So if you follow us on the social media platforms, you'll see that we have reels out there and TikTok. Part of our marketing strategy that we've come up with is we want to do more informal videos like this, and then eventually, they'll a couple of weeks later they'll be posted on our YouTube channel so people could watch them. And we've been approaching it fairly similar, but there are differences. And we need to determine whether or not those differences are needed for the regions, what will be incorporated from one company into another, and from the other into Ruadán, say, for example. And so we're not entirely sure how that's going to look yet. I will tell you that all the staff are excited about that prospect. I know it's not a good answer, but
yeah, no, well, I think from my side of things, the strategy is to make people more visible, myself, but more so the authors. We definitely we've seen a huge shift in marketing trends, whereby and this goes back to, are you an established publisher or an indie publisher, and what way do you approach things? But people are buying from people, and you've seen, say, on TikTok, for example, which we know has exploded and has been a trendsetter for quite some time. You'll have the likes of author talk and book talk, which are those hashtags that people will be jumping on. And this has led to, you may have seen it in bookstores. I've seen it in a number of bookstores. It'll say TikTok made me buy this. I've seen that heading over the bookshelf, or book talk books or whatever. There's an entire
Book Talk
section
recommended
dedicated.
books. I was downtown
Absolutely.
Dublin last time, and I
Yeah,
bought
yeah,
two
yeah.
of them on the table. But
Yeah, so it's right there. So I think that visibility is something. Visibility of authors is something that
Yep.
I want to really push with the strategy going forward, rather than pushing the label and the label identity, because I think that credibility, from my point, I feel that it has been built, and now the authors we're going to collaborate on how we market our products going forward. Yeah.
And collaboration is key, right? Because
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even the big folks engage the authors, unless you're Stephen King or of that caliber. Um, the author will be doing a lot of marketing as well, and my team has put together guidelines for the authors, because some of them, especially new authors, are very new to marketing and the scheme there. They will also have the contacts in their local bookstores, so it'll be easier to go through them, to arrange events. My event coordinator, Elizabeth, is also on here watching and taking notes. But at the end of the day, what works? We talk about TikTok, and we are on TikTok, but we're not exploding on TikTok or spending a lot of time on that yet, because they keep changing what's going to happen in the States about TikTok, and that's again a regional issue, whereas Europe seems to be a little more less dystopian about it. So
yeah, a little bit more open. Yeah, if you're happy to move on through these questions, Richard, let's see if we can.
Yep. Yeah, before
ask
I
some
start
people's
waxing
questions.
poetic more.
So there's a question: how did this collaboration come about, and what does it mean to your existing cadre of authors? I think we've covered that. Definitely the leveraging each other's infrastructure, in terms of reaching totally different regions and different readers that we otherwise would have had a lot of difficulty in doing so. And it just means that authors who feel that they deserve a wider audience, or that their books or their titles would play well with in a different region, we hope to be able to bring that to them. Sorry, Deborah, I think I interrupted you there. Did you want to add something?
Oh, no worries. I was just going to ask if you'd like me to read the questions out for you.
If you're
Yeah,
up,
I don't mind.
if you're up for it, I'm cognizant you're not feeling great.
Do you have some initial projects in mind or details you can share about such things at this early stage?
I did
We're
say that
playing our cards close to our chest, aren't we?
we are. I did say the next question was yours to start off with, Ronald. So I'm going to let you have to start with that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, as part of our agreement, I mean, we're going to be focusing on the each other's newer titles going forward, instead of trying to sift through what we've already published and how they're going to work. But decisions have to be made, and so we have to strategize in terms of how will each other's titles fare in each other's respective market. And some of them may not translate well, and some of them may not be received well. Even for the ones that do, we might have to look at things like Richard and I have spoken about. Well, maybe the cover that I've used for some of those might work. You might need a different cover from how it will sit on the shelf in an American bookshop, and vice versa. So all that has to be brainstormed and figured out going forward. So we haven't. It's really sort of on a case by case basis. So we don't have specific projects. There are some that we can't really reveal yet, but we are looking at attending London Book Fair in 2027 together as a cooperative, and we've made inquiries about that. And what we hope to do there, as well as new titles and forthcoming titles by that time, we want to showcase our catalogs to date, and we'll do that with physical catalogs as well as books that we can actually display as well. So that's in the frame at the moment.
Ronald's being very kind to me. Part of the problem is we just signed with our new distributor and our printer, and just got our books moved over. They were on Amazon. We pulled them off, and they're just being populated. This past week, they started reappearing on Amazon. It's an unfortunate step in this process, but it's an important one. But we wanted to make sure that mechanism is in place. Plus, we also had 2 releases in December, so we were coming off the holidays. I've been working my folks ragged, so part of that is we need to have that discussion. It's one of the reasons I'm going back over in March to continue those discussions, because we know that there are series out there for both of us. That we know that there's books that have been published and there are new ones coming up, and deciding what order that's going to go in and coming up with our collective pipeline is going to be really important, because then we can turn around and communicate it both to the authors as well as our distributors. I think that hopefully that answers the question. Deborah, what's next?
How many books does Ruadán plan to publish from Temple Dark and presumably vice versa?
We don't have a dedicated number to that, guys. So as
Yeah, I think
we've
that's
just said,
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a similar question. Yeah, what books or how many books? It's a similar question until we come together on that and see what's going to work going forward.
I will tell you, I've read 50% personally read 50% of what Ronald's published, including first two of his books at this point. So we're reading everything, and that's all I can say right now. There's still contracts that need to be addressed, so it's unfair of us to say anything more than that before those legalities are taken care of.
Okay. Any impending calls for submissions?
We have one that's open right now, short story call. We have a series of anthologies, our In the City series. We did Winter in the City. Spring in the City came out in December. We have an open call currently for Summer in the City, and that ends at the end of this month. So unless you've got a short story that takes place in a specific city of dark fiction, dark speculative fiction, ready to go, it's there. That's going to close soon, but we are going to open up later this year for both novels and novellas again, because we made our selections already from our last open call. So we're planning on an open call middle of the year or late spring for novels and novellas, and then we're going to open up for short stories for our final in the anthology, which I bet you all can guess the name of, because we've done winter, spring, and now summer in the city, and we're doing one more. It's not fall, it's autumn in the city. So
you're going European with that one, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm halfway there anyway. So
yeah, so for ourselves, I mean, I've publications lined up right through 27, but I probably will open submissions late this year so that I can think about what's going to happen beyond that. But because we have a few series going, and because some of my existing authors who have written standalones are already coming back to me with newer stuff, they obviously will get sort of first look, in terms of me reading what they have. We've gone through the submissions that have come in. I'm pretty much caught up with them. I will open our channel, The Dark Anthology. Will be the aim is to publish that at the end of May this year, and to have a launch event at that. So Channel the Dark Volume 3 submissions will most likely open towards the end of this year as well, if not mid this year. But for novels, it's going to be late this year at the earliest before I open submissions.
As a corollary to that question from the chat, we have, are you planning to do any joint calls for novel or novella submissions?
At some point, I can't imagine us not doing that. We have too much fun for that. But we both have a pipeline right now that we need to get through, and we want to make sure we plan it out properly, because there's nothing worse than chaos when it comes to this industry.
Yeah, and it could be that we do a joint anthology that sort of gets a sort of a cross-regional thing going on. But yeah, that's something we'll talk about, in
due course.
Yeah.
Another question in the chat: for the Ruadán novel open submissions this year, what genres are you looking for?
So we specialize in two things: dark speculative fiction, as well as noir crime / thriller stories. We will be opening for all of those, and I will give you this little tidbit. We are also exploring the possibility of opening up a new imprint as well later this year, which we will open submissions for. But I'm not telling you what it is. But it's awesome, and my marketing team are already on top of getting ready to sell it. But we're going to be opening up a new imprint as well. For right now, dark speculative fiction. So science fiction, fantasy, horror, science fiction and fantasy with dark elements. If you want examples of that real quick, Event Horizon from a science fiction perspective, and The Two Towers, really from Lord of the Rings. There's those two are incredibly dark. There's tons of others that are out there, but
Yeah, I think
we're pretty excited about it.
so I think if I can just add in relation to submissions, I think I might be a little bit more specific this time. What I'm really looking for, I'd really love, because I love really atmospheric horror, and it's been a while since, I would have read I read James Herbert, Clive Barker, um, and Brian Lumley, of course, who I already recommended. Necroscope is probably my favorite horror series. I love that. So if anyone has something like that that really makes your skin crawl, yeah, we'll come back to that.
Jack Ketchum, Stephen Graham Jones, Gwendolyn Keist, Sarah Reed, Mercedes Yardley, who we're publishing something from later this year. Those are we love those horror stories that will make you keep the lights on for a couple of days. So
I'll just answer Robbie's quick question there, if you don't mind, just regarding
sure.
previously self-published works. I've had questions about that in the past from people, and generally the answer is no, but that doesn't mean it's not a possibility. And this sort of comes back to what I spoke about in terms of the collaborative marketing. If we feel that, I never wanted to be too cynical in terms of anyone having, well, you already have 100,000 followers on Instagram or whatever it was, and so that's a safe bet. That I judge the work by whether I enjoy it and whether I want to publish it and whether I know I can stand behind it and be proud of it. It helps me when I'm at trade shows and conferences that I can talk about everything I've published. I've read them all, I've enjoyed them all, and people respond well to that. So it would be on a case-by-case basis, and we would look at, there are issues though, Robbie, when it comes to previously self-published works, because they tend to have, especially if they've been published digitally, they tend to have proliferated across the internet, a lot of them to sites that you are probably not even aware of. And they can be scraped for PDFs and so on. So from a copyright point of view, it can be difficult. So that's something you might want to just keep in mind as well.
Okay. This is Elizabeth. I'm gonna jump on now because Deborah's having weird internet stuff.
No problem.
So Di had a question of, would either of you ever consider single author short story collections in the future?
I'm going to be publishing one later this year. So the answer, Di, is absolutely yes, especially if it's an author like yourself that we've worked with and they've come to us with a potential collection. We are not having an open call for collections, at least in the near term, but we are interested in them. For example, the one we are going to be publishing is by a marvelous author by the name of Libby Cudmore. She did the Wade and Jack series, and it's a collection of those short stories. And Wade and Jack's series didn't really take off with another publisher, but I loved the story. I love the characters, and I bought it. So she's written a collection of short stories, and that's going to come out later this year. In fact, she sent me the first draft of that collection. So yeah, yes, from a Ruadán perspective, as a collective perspective, that is still on the table for discussion, I think, Ron. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think for me with collections, again, not trying to be too cynical about it and say, well, maybe if there was a profile there that someone knew what was coming or what you expect from that author, but if it was something that I hadn't dealt with before, maybe. Thanks very much, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie. Nice to see you.
We'll talk soon. If it was someone I hadn't heard of before, maybe I might be interested in maybe sort of a concept album collection, if that makes sense. Something that was thematically connected, or some sort of multi-perspective, or multiple stories that wove together and you didn't see it coming, for example. That's that sort of thing. So that could be interesting. I'm a big fan of heavy metal concept albums, so that could work.
You, you're gonna love the Black Tapes anthology we got coming next year.
You're welcome, Dan.
Elizabeth, any other
Yes.
questions?
Yes. So Daniel has a question of, for Ruadán novel submissions, does the crime noir thriller necessarily have to have a speculative element to it?
No, it does not. There's a little Easter egg. If you see the screensaver behind me, there's a little Easter egg for something that we haven't published yet. We haven't even shown the cover widely yet. There it is right now. It's called Pop. It's by Angel Luis Colon, and it is a marvelous noir crime with a bit of horror involved. No speculative aspects at all. Actually, there's some really dark comedy in there too. It's a brilliant piece, and we can't wait to get this one out to you guys. But the answer is yeah. We are looking for things that are not necessarily speculative, which is why I always split up our dark speculative fiction versus our noir crime, because it doesn't have, it can, it could be like a Jim Butcher supernatural detective series, right? I love those anyway, but it could be also, along the lines of the Maltese Falcon and other Raymond Chandler type stories. No, so it doesn't have to be.
Awesome. Okay. So the next question is, what are the top 3 challenges with working with artists as a small press?
Ronald.
We did have some cynical quips about this, but I think as a small press, I would say that I probably touched on it earlier. The days are very much gone in which you would just sign a contract with a publisher and then sit back and not do anything in terms of promoting yourself. And it's simply that social media has just come to completely dominate the marketing sphere. So that's something that and that's not to it's not to be sort of to attack any authors in that sense, because some people either don't want to do that or don't know how to do that or aren't comfortable doing it, and I completely understand that. And it's something I had to learn to do myself. But that has been challenging. I can see obviously I'm on top of sales, and I can see direct correlation between authors' social media activity and sales. I can see, and I've contacted authors and I'm saying, you must have been busy, you must have done something. You've sold X number of copies today, and they'll hit all in the same day, all within a couple of hours of someone posting something interesting or saying something, and they just happen to mention my novel, or why don't you go check that out? So that has been that has been very significant. 3 challenges. Do I have to come up with 3?
I can help here if you'd like.
Yeah, you take over. You see if you can get number 2.
I'll get number 2 here. A book production is a project, and we've just hired a brilliant, very detail oriented young man. Everybody's young compared to me, but he is bringing order to chaos here. In other words, time frames and things of following a project plan and making sure things are done on time and in a quality way, because that's what our readers expect from us. They expect a story that they can escape with, and we want to provide that to them. We are, for all that we do that with social commentary, what we are truly first is an entertainment company, right? We provide entertainment sources for readers. And we're delighted to do that. And the only way to do that on a regular basis, especially with dealing with distributors and sales folks and margins and all of those things, is to hit time frames and to really get the schedule in place there. So it's just a matter of an education, and it goes along with Ronald's answer about, kind of educating folks on social media. It's why we have guidelines for our authors, especially the new authors who may not have had a lot of exposure for that, and also giving them opportunities to read in public and public speaking and things along those lines. But also understanding that this is a business, and if you want to sell your book, we need 9 to 12 months from when we sign the contract to get the book out the door, and sometimes even longer. And we need to hit those deadlines, because unless we've got the art from the writer, we've got nothing to sell.
I think I can add as well, and especially because the question was as a small press, I think when it comes to things like marketing budgets and promotional budgets, this is very important when it comes to launch time. When it comes to release time, and you want to do a book tour, it has been it's been clear to me that touring the author, and I've been able to do that obviously with my Irish authors more so than anyone abroad. And this will come back to author visibility and so on. But finding a way to engage with audiences with a new author has been a challenge, has been a significant challenge. And whether that's attending conventions, whether that's seeing if an author could do that themselves, but then I'd like to sort of be there because it helps me to sort of promote the label as well. And especially when, we've got new authors and they've never done this before, they might be a bit anxious about doing this, attending panels and things like that. So, I think unlike, the major players, these multi-billion-dollar industries who can just foot the bill for their author traveling around lots of different places and running their book tours. That's a significant aspect of being a small press as well. I think, a significant challenge.
I think that is the three right there.
Oh, we got three, yeah.
So I just have one more question since we are at 3 o'clock, but I would really love to know the answer of this. Do you intend to use your combined powers for good or evil?
Definitely evil. Definitely.
Yeah, the way I like to answer that question is, if the Force was real and I was a Force user, there's absolutely no way I wouldn't have a red lightsaber and be missing at least 2 limbs right now. That's just me being honest. We're gonna use our combined power for a Force for good, because our artists are talented, they are driven, they are passionate, and our job is to get as many people to read their work and see their art as possible. So I think that's pretty good.
Well, it's evil disguised as good, isn't it? Because we're publishing dark stuff. So and we're having fun with that.
I was glossing over that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm passionate about this. I love doing this. I love working with the authors. I love helping them to make their art as good as it can be, and to present it in a very a very exciting way, and to get people all psyched up about reading it. And there's nothing more gratifying than, especially when I'm at the like conventions and shows, and having someone come up and buying your author's book and saying, oh, and again, going back to the whole thing that I loved it, I enjoyed it. So this is all good. It's great. It's fun. And it's great to work with authors, and so long may it last.
I can't agree with you more, mate. I haven't woken up on a Monday morning champing at the bit. Yeah, I did say that right. That's amazing. Champing at the
Yeah.
bit to get to work in decades. I
Yeah.
love what we do, and
Mm.
I've got 4 things I want to get done after this meeting today. Okay, I'm avoiding shoveling the snow here in Boston because we're already at about 6 inches. But um, but yeah, I love this. I love our job. I love our authors. I love the stories they present. I love reading them. I mean, Ron, we get to read for a living. How
I
awesome
know, I
is
know.
that?
I don't want to go back to doing a real job, you know. And I know some of my authors on here have said the same to me again. So we get to do this, and very few people can say that about what they do. You know, we get to do it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
it's great.
and we're doing it together to make sure that we get the voices out there. We'll do more
Mm.
talks of these depending on how this one ends up going and what you guys think, and see if we can get some more people interested and more questions coming in.
Yeah,
Um,
we definitely do this again, and we might do them sort of thematic or something like that. You know, we might talk about different topics in writing and how we deal with them as editors or as publishers. There's lots of different things we can do with this. So I hope all of you can join us again.
Thank you everybody for your time today. I know it's it's late in the evening on a Sunday in well, not late, but in Ireland, and appreciate you spending some of your precious time with us. So hopefully we'll see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.